So welcome to Planet PCR, an interactive discussion format for the sharing of experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic around the world. And hello everybody from Bernard Prendergast here in London, and from my friends and colleagues Ashok Seth in Delhi, India, and Mao Chen in Chengdu, China. Mao, it's now several months since the pandemic commenced in China. And I wonder if you could look back and just reflect on the different phases of the pandemic and how they impacted on your practice in your hospital in Chengdu.
Okay, as you have mentioned, this outbreaks started several months ago, and at that day, I think nobody knows the reality of this coronary virus disease. So we have everybody in China, each person in healthcare workers feel some levels. And at that time, we don't know which is right, which is wrong. So we just to prevent, just using some different prevent styles to keep the most people's safety and health. I think at that time in our hospital, we just stopped the elective procedures like the PCR for the normal coronary artery disease, and just for the acute coronary syndrome, each person the ST elevation myocardial infection, we do the emergent PCR. But at the time, we must do very good personal protective equipment, so everybody know how about the the transmission capability and other things. But not this just after the several months hard work, and everything just become better. The situation in our hospital become better and better. Nowadays we have almost back to normal. Not only the emergent PCR, but also the elective PCR always in the normal style, and everybody in the in Chengdu back to the normal lifestyle, is personally the hotspot.
That's great to hear, Mao, and tell us about the impact on your team, the impact of the illness on any members of your team, and the psychological impact for your team, looking after so many people in critical phases of illness. How was that handled?
Yeah, I think that at the first stage, everybody in the nervous style, because we don't understand, we don't familiar with this level variance, and we don't know the right work style, how to prevent the patient, how to prevent ourselves. But after we learn about from the patients, the infected patients, we found that if you can protect yourself very good and you can prevent your patients very good, you can stay healthy. So at the time, I think we pay attention to the the organized style from our administration in our hospital, and we keep we provide the different equipment to us and to patients. And if from our experience, if you have very good prevent equipment, you can stay healthy. At that time, I think my colleagues and they don't feel nervous just in camp.
So it's very encouraging to hear that life is returning back to normal, even people going back to eating hot pot together, a sense of reality returning to China. Turning to you now, Ashok, in India, I mean, I think you are in a state of preparedness and readiness for the pandemic. Can you paint us a picture of life in Delhi right now?
So hello, Bernard. Hello, my colleagues at the PCR around the globe. Bernard, I think I'll have to put both India as well as life in Delhi into perspective. In India, we are at today at 6,500 cases and perhaps 500 to 700 cases being added on per day. We're also at 200 deaths in the country, with around 30 deaths added on in the last 1 day. So we are looking at this stage better than, say, Europe and United States. One of the reasons is that our first case, a documented case in India, happened on the 2nd of March. And the proactive, preemptive measures which got put, as you're aware of, the 100% lockdown, which happened from the 25th. But prior to that, even all flights had been stopped. The people who were coming from abroad were quarantined for 14 days mandatorily. And contacts were also quarantined. And the stringent measures, and there's a very interestingly, but a stringency measure came out from Cambridge University today itself. I don't know whether you saw that. That actually related to how strict the countries became in terms of clamping down on travel, activities, quarantine, and so on, and lockdowns. And when we had 500 cases, we'd crossed the 95% stringency measure because of the proactive government, while Italy did that when 50,000 cases were on, and Britain still lies at 70% in stringency measures. So that helped us to slow down our curve. You see, the concern was, and you obviously said it right, we are of 1.3 billion people. We are congested, and many areas are very congested. People are socioeconomically deprived in some extent in many areas, and they're also undereducated. And if this breaks loose like it has in Europe and in America, then our healthcare system would be overwhelmed with all these problems. Well, having said that, we still don't know what's around the corner. And luckily, what this 2 weeks of now 18 days of lockdown have given us to be prepared for ramping up our healthcare facilities. So while we did not have enough PPEs when we started the lockdown, we've ramped up our PPEs. The manufacturing in India, 20 companies have started manufacturing PPEs. The N95 masks are going. The supplies are getting accumulated and huge. The availability of beds has become huge. The healthcare facilities have ramped up. But what's interestingly happened, Bernard, that till today, our ICUs are quiet with vacant beds at the moment. Yeah. So we're very different to what we're seeing in the West. We believe that it may just be around the corner. We believe that it may be 1 or 2 weeks away when we get overwhelmed with sick patients. But it's possible, but we're not seeing the sick patients yet. We're not seeing people who got pneumonias. We're not seeing the people who are actually dying from pneumonias. Maybe a lot of asymptomatic disease is happening, but not the sick and serious disease. And we just hope that there is something which is protecting, if not the fact that the clampdown and the lockdown is, it was 4 weeks of 3 weeks of a lockdown, and we are now in the realms of wondering whether this lockdown should be phased off slowly or should be continued, so that we can continue on a flatter curve rather than the spikes that we've started seeing in the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that when we look back in a few months' time, we will learn a lot in terms of the way the planet has responded to this pandemic.
Correct.
The different governmental reactions and the way societies have behaved and the way it's influenced the rollout of infection and the strain on healthcare.
So Bernard, one more point about Delhi.
Go ahead, Ashok, yeah.
One more point about Delhi, and you've been to Delhi. You know how the air quality index has been terrible in the past. Well, for once, we start seeing clean air, brilliant blue sky, stars in the sky, and birds chirping outside because it's all quiet. And I saw a parrot sitting outside my home today, and I said, wow, where did this parrot come from? So I think the life has changed in many ways also for the better. Less pollution, less stress.
You can even see the fish in the canals in Venice right now, but we'll learn to colleagues in Italy. But Mao, if we come to you now, we just become a little bit more focused on the medicine in the few minutes that we have left available. what would you say are the key medical messages for the community? What were the key elements of success in the management of these patients on your intensive care units and in your cardiology unit? What are the key things to look out for?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to surveil patients with the COVID-19, and these patients always have lots of comorbidities, and not only the lung infection, but also the the cardiovascular disease, diabetes, kidney dysfunction. To this kind of patients, I think it's very important message should give my colleagues is, you must depend on not only you but also you colleagues from the the interdisciplinary collaboration is very important. This is, I think, the most important message. The second message, just because the China is so huge, and we want to some developing regions don't have a very good this healthcare situation. To this kind of patients, we using the 5G, this kind of technology can help this some healthcare workers at the poor regions and at the developing regions to help them to to diagnose and give their suggestion about the treatment to this kind of patients. And third, I think the the quantity and the isolation to the patients is very important. I think in the most severe time in our hospital, we just admitted 20% the normal patients. Almost 80% are placed just for the infected patients. So I think this the organized style is very important to help us to overcome this this pandemic infection.
So some very positive messages and some positive lessons for the community. And Ashok, I know that you're a very positive, optimistic person, and I was very encouraged to read your article in the Hindustan Times reflecting on the positive humanitarian aspect of the reaction of the population. Would you summarize that for us in closing?
Yeah, yes, Bernard, and I would. If you, just like I explained, if this disease process hits India like it does, like it hit Europe as well as United States, and if we're not cautious, then the repercussions of that could be 10 times more disastrous than we've actually seen elsewhere in the world. Therefore, we have to, while we take extreme care in all our advisories to our public, I also believe that this is not the time to actually believe that the world is coming to an end. 21 days of a lockdown, and it's very strict lockdown in India where people can't even go out and can be fined for actually being out, creates depression, despair, and dejection. I think what we've got to look at is what's happening. And certainly for India, we're late in the curve, should we say. And we are at a time when there's a lot of research and science going on around the world, all of us working together to find solutions and treatments like trials of hydroxychloroquine, trials of antibody immune injections, trials of remdesivir itself. I think they're all going to bear fruits very rapidly in the next 2-3 weeks. We're going to start seeing the results of these treatments, especially for our serious patients. So that's one. The second aspect is that perhaps that story around BCG, and you probably heard that, Bernard, that the countries which had a mandatory BCG policy seem to have lower rates or 10 times lower rates of at least serious infections. And we are seeing less serious infections, at least at the moment. We can't say what's around the corner, and let's hope that's the way it stays. And if it is so, we're looking at step by step for every hope that we can grab. And maybe that's another hope that we look at. And of course, all of us need to be together in this. You sitting there, Mao, ourselves, United States, we all need to be together. We need to be positive into this because the combined force of all our, say, good wishes, of all our efforts, of all our energies pooled together, perhaps can be the biggest force in deciding how we come out of this this truly rough patch which the world has never seen before, and perhaps beyond this, the world will never see again. So I think that we should all live in hope of combining our energies together.
Well, I sincerely hope that we never see such circumstances again, but I think we will all learn from it in a very positive fashion. And as you say, Ashok, and as the teams in China have adequately demonstrated, if we all pull together, then we can prevail and we can conquer this devastating pandemic. So thank you both for joining us this morning, and I wish you well in your challenges in the weeks and months ahead. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Mao.
Thank you, Shah.